Hi everyone, I'm Fiona Forbes, and those of you in the biz will be familiar with my guest today, David Morgan, the Morgan Report. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
So tell us what brings you to Vancouver.
Well, I'm here every year for the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, and of course newsletters, financial newsletter writers such as myself are usually invited, especially if they have something to say, and I'm not bashful. I usually get on stage and I try to rock it because I'm pretty passionate about the whole sector.
And let's talk about that passion. It began for you very young. How old were you when you first discovered your love of money and the business?
I was fascinated with the idea of freedom. And to me, it was financial freedom. So if you had enough of that green stuff, you were free. You could do what you want. You could travel. You could discover things, whatever. So I had that idea. When I was 11 years old, the money changed in the United States from silver coinage to what I call Johnson slugs. And that intrigued me as an 11-year-old kid, but most of the adults around me didn't seem to pay any attention to it. So you might say that was a spark. I had no idea at that point in time, where my life would lead or anything, but it did impress me. Yeah, it did spark something.
And when did this all transition to a career for you? Was it from the time you were young, or did you venture into other things?
Actually, it was I've always been kind of a studious, nerdy type. And I started looking at, money and the history of money, and I discovered that there was something I didn't really like about banking, and that was fractional reserve banking. I don't want to get too down the rabbit hole, but on my own self-discovery, I was like, something is wrong with this system. And I started looking at monetary history, and I discovered something very wrong with the system. It always fails. So that got me more involved, and I learned about the newsletter business. And these guys were independent thinkers, women too, that wrote basically in those days snail mail. And it was like they're, some of the best thinkers in my view that were writing this stuff. And that just really fascinated me. So I got more and more involved with the newsletter business as a participant, reading some of these guys and learning more and more and more. So I just kind of got sucked in and then became more and more passionate the whole way through.
And you've obviously stuck with the newsletters. People can find out more on your website, but obviously you've branched off into more things. You've got the podcast, you've got consulting. So tell me a little bit more about what you do and how you help other people just by talking about what you know.
Sure. The bread and butter is the newsletter, of course, and I have a free one for just basic education on the economic situation we face on a global basis. So that's number one. And then after that, I've got the Morgan Report, which is a paid service. There's two tiers. It's called a premium, where I give a newsletter and I do videos for the paid members only. And then on top of that, I have a mastermind service that's kind of a top tier hedge fund manager types, accredited investors, that type of thing. And then on the consulting side, I do consult. I consult with, bullion dealers, CEOs, all kinds of people, and of course general investors too. And then I started a royalty company a couple of years ago because I love the streaming model, the royalty model. They're very successful, and that's where most of our investments early on went. So we're making money in the gold and silver sector when the gold and silver prices were going down the tubes. Didn't matter to a royalty company, they're going to make money anyway. So we were quite successful where others in the industry really weren't doing as well. So I think I answered everything.
Yeah. Now, silver has always been the fascination for you. Why silver of everything that's out there?
Yeah, it kind of started out as a gold bug. Going back into my late teens, early 20s, I thought, gold. That's kind of everything I read and studied. But then when the Hunt brothers situation came through, I thought, why would somebody that wealthy focus so much on the silver market? So then I started diving into silver, and I made it like an obsession. I started really going deep on answering that question. Why would the Hunt brothers want to be in the silver market? Well, there's several reasons, but the crux of the issue, silver is really undervalued relative to gold. Bunker Hunt, and this is hearsay, but I met the fund manager for the Hunt brothers. This has been a fascinating trip for me because you hear a lot of stuff in this industry that may or may not be true. So I was like tipped off, you're going to meet the fund manager for Bunker Hunt. It's like, oh yeah, I've heard those stories before. And sure enough, I did. So he thought that, this fund manager said that Bunker thought that the correct gold to silver ratio was about 5-to-1. I didn't hear it directly from Bunker, but I did hear it from his fund manager, who I trust. Mm-hmm. So the point being is that it just turned out to be a fascinating study because not only on the monetary side, which is much more robust, richer than the gold story, It's the high-tech part of it, that silver conducts electricity better than anything else. It conducts heat better than anything else. It actually has acoustic qualities that no other metal has. So there's all these things. I gave a speech here at a workshop one time, and I don't know, it was on a roll. Maybe not, you may not like the joke, but here it goes. At the very end, I talked about how great a silver investment was, and I said, if you don't feel the heat, what did I say? I can't even remember.
You can't blow the punchline.
I blew it. Anyway, we're good at it. No, what is it? If you can't, you're going to feel the heat. I can't remember what it was. Conduct electricity. I don't know. But it worked perfectly at the time.
As long as it worked on stage.
Yeah.
Now, let's bring it back to Vancouver. You're obviously here for the conference. When someone like yourself comes to a conference like this, what are you looking for? As you said, you hear a lot of things in this business,
right.
true and untrue. You're walking through the booths. What stands out for you at a conference like this?
Well, I try to stay open-minded, and always I'm looking for what every other investor is looking for, and that's that story that is so above the rest that you don't want to miss it. The fear of missing out, called FOMO. Mm-hmm. So I'm always on the lookout for that, but I'm pretty jaded at this point in my age and how many great stories I've heard so many times.
The one that got away.
Most of them never really take place. I do have my favorite speculation in 40 years, which is saying a lot, and that was not at the conference. I actually knew the gentleman from a previous investment that we did and worked out very well. But it's a fascinating field because this is one of the few industries you can go from zero to hero pretty quick. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And the way I structure things is to be conservative. Big money goes to big companies, mid money in middle companies, and then if you want to speculate, do that. Speculate. Bet a little and a lot. I think if you take the approach that I've taken, you've been extremely successful as an investor. As an example, Fiona, this year, January 2020, I went back a year. And I like short lists. I don't like long lists. So anyone could put out 100 companies. That doesn't do anyone any benefit in my view. So we have 7 companies that were buys during that year time frame, and the average of all 7 was a 63% gain. The S&P gained 29% last year, and everybody's talking about it. What no one's really talking about is the major factor set of companies in that perform best with the gold stocks. But no one knows that unless you study the sector like I do. So beat the S&P by a double. The mid-tiers did even better, a couple of them. And then on the speculative side, have a situation that is very key to the environment. It's really a technology stock that has spillover effects into the mining sector as well.
Interesting stuff. Well, if you want to find out more, you'll have to subscribe to the newsletter. You can find out everything you need to know at themorganreport.com. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.